Quorum call.
Madam Speaker,
Check what? Oh, yeah, yeah. Chris, how you looking at me? Not a handful missing. It's not that bad. They got most of them. I think there's two that's. I think there's two that's in there that actually haven't hit their button yet. But that's pretty accurate. Silverberry and Anderson aren't here.
Has everyone recorded their presence? So the clerk will take the call. There being 121 members present, the House is now in session. Clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, February the 27th, 2021.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to consider the reading of the journal from the previous day.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Message from the Senate, consent calendar, Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 71, Senator Sidnor, Judiciary.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of Senate Bill 71 be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker,
Clerk will take the call. There being 119 members present, the House is still in order. The calendar of the third reading House Bills number 24. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 73, State and Local Government and Public Institutions of Higher Education, Teleworking.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 73, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 248, Condominiums and Homeowners Associations, Right and Restrictions, Composting.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 124 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 248, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 449, Family Law, Marriage, Licenses, and Records.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 449, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 466, Higher Education Student Identification Cards, Required Information.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 466, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 541, Montgomery County Residential Property Sales School District Information.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 110 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 541, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 718, State Coordinator for Autism Strategy and Advisory Stakeholder Group on Autism-Related Needs, Location, and Funding.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 718, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 887, State Debt Annuity Bond Fund, Use of Bond Premiums.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 887, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading House Bills number 26. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 10, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, Living Organ Donors.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 10, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 271, Public Safety Law Enforcement Diversion Programs.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 271, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 528, St. Mary's County, Repeal of Impact Fee, Authorization of Building Excise Tax.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 123 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 528, having received constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 825, Cooperative Housing Corporations Dispute Settlement and Eviction Procedures.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 825, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 853, Small Minority and Women-Owned Businesses Account Alterations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 853, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1137, Property Tax Credit, Business Entities, State of Emergency.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1137, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Special Order Calendar number 34. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 445, Criminal Procedure, Charging Procedures, Citation. Favor report is amended, adopted.
Recognizing the maker of the motion, Minority Whip.
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Okay. The gentleman from Cecil County in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The amendment number is 343222-1.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill concerns was actually brought to me by a colleague, and the reason that I offer this amendment, and I'll get into the details here in a minute, is that our officers are currently risking their lives every day when they go out on the job, usually from a foe or a bad actor or someone who's a criminal. But now they face a new threat, and that threat deals with some of the substances that they come in contact with, specifically fentanyl. As we know, fentanyl is an extremely powerful drug that's synthesized in a laboratory somewhere and is generally administered in a very controlled environment with extremely small doses. However, it has become available to drug dealers, and they use it to lace other drugs, whether that be heroin and the like. So what this amendment does is it doesn't explicitly carve out fentanyl because An officer has no idea until it's actually tested what that substance is. What this amendment does is it sequesters off if the officer believes that there may be a fentanyl-containing substance, then it would exempt that. And the reason we wanted to offer this amendment is because depending on whether they have gloves available, it's a crime scene, all sorts of things can go wrong. And we want to keep our officers safe, right? They don't have the equipment yet. They don't have something to synthesize and determine if that is it on the site. So I think that this is going to protect the safety of our officers. I think that this is a common sense amendment. And with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to move the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd ask you to resist the amendment. What this bill does is it says that an officer may be able to charge by citation if they find a person in possession of a small amount of a controlled dangerous substance that is not marijuana. And that can be commonly, it's heroin, cocaine, PCP, something like that. What this amendment would do would be to say you may issue a citation unless you think that the controlled dangerous substance is dangerous, and then I'm not sure what happens next, but the officer would then, I guess, have the choice to take them into custody or issue them a citation. So I don't think this does anything to help the officer's decision-making process or protect the officer. It just adds superfluous language that's unnecessary in the bill. I'd ask you to resist the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to clarify, again, this would move it to the higher threshold where the arrest would be made, and our officers wouldn't be put in a situation where they're releasing someone on a simple citation for distributing a controlled substance such as fentanyl, which is killing the number one cause of overdoses in our community. And for that reason, I'd like to, again, stress the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 11. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 85, Baltimore County Workers' Compensation, Permanent Partial Disability, Detention, and Correctional Officers. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favor. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 647, Corporations and Associations, Fees for Processing Articles of Dissolution, Certificates of Cancellation, and Other Documents. Repeal. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 648, Electric Cooperatives, Meetings, Alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires the cooperative's members to determine by majority vote how annual and special meetings are to be held. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 781, Corporations and Real Estate Investment Trust, miscellaneous, favorable.
The question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 839, State Department of Assessments and Taxations, list of business entities not filing annual report, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 12. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 30, Public Utilities, Office of Climate Council, Establishment Climate Council Act, favorable amendments, amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker,
Recognizing the floor leader.
move so much be considered a reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 replaces the bulk of the bill with an alteration to the first charge to the Office of People's Counsel, alters the cap of the annual assessment that supports the OPC, and makes conforming changes. Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Recognize, I see. Yeah, the question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? The gentleman from St. Mary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A couple of questions for the floor leader on this.
Yes, go
Can you
ahead.
explain what the bill does?
Yeah, the bill, as amended, the bill adds to the charge of the Office of People Counsel. The bill requires the Office of People Counsel to consider public safety, economic welfare of the environment, and the interests of the state. And what that does initially, the bill was going to be considered a separate bill, but this bill now just transferred that responsibility over to the People's Counsel.
So I'm looking at the fiscal note. It's $2.6 million. Why is it so expensive? Like, what is that money being spent on?
Well, that's to hire a counsel, and also any staffing that would be required for the service in the People's Counsel office.
How's the board or the council made up? Like, who appoints it, and what qualifications are there to serve on it?
Okay, the AG's office would appoint the counsel, yeah, and then that council could select whatever members he want, and that would be paid through the rate that's assessed from the the funds that comes from the utility companies.
Okay, so the money comes from the utility companies?
Yes, there's an assessment rate that from intrastate services, and that rate is assessed annually, and the funds come from there.
Okay,
Yes.
I appreciate your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
Are there any further debate? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 658, Transforming Manufacturing in a Digital Economy Work Group, Making It in Maryland, favorable amendments, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
As amended, House Bill 658 establishes the work group to study the transformation of manufacturing in Maryland's emerging digital economy. Staffed by the Department of Commerce, the work group is charged with a wide variety of issues to examine and on which to make recommendations such as relevant professional research, public-private partnerships, state funding levels, new tax credits, and the state's current statutory and regulatory authority over manufacturing. Amendment number 1 alters the staffing of the work group from the Department of Legislative Services to the Department of Commerce. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the floor leader rise, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Can you tell us what this bill does?
It establishes a work group that will look into some of the new emerging technologies relating to professional research, public-private partnerships, state funding levels, new tax credits, etc. It's a work group. I mean, bottom line is an informational work group.
And what was the fiscal note on it?
I don't believe there is one for the work group. It's going to be done by the Department of Commerce.
Okay. I'll take a closer look at it before third. I guess I don't have an amendment. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 768, Montgomery County Community Choice Energy Pilot Program. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment number 1, move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1, adjust the number of deadlines relating to the Public Service Commission and notification. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 777, Power Plant Research Program, review of application for Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Madam Speaker, as amended, House Bill 777 establishes a 6-month deadline for the Maryland Department of Environment and the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, to review and make recommendations on a completed application for a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. Amendment number 1 alters the standard for waiving the deadline to be for good cause. Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. The gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader rise? I just had a couple of questions about the bill to get a better understanding. I know that it must be a very well thought out bill because I know the reputation of the bill sponsor to be sterling.
Yes.
And so, in all seriousness, I'm sure that you're the right person to ask the questions. My understanding of the bill is it interjects now the Department of the Environment and the Department of Natural Resources into the Certificate of Public Necessity and Convenience. Is that right?
That is correct.
I'll just call it the certificate process.
Right.
It interjects them into the certificate process for the construction or the certification of new power plants. Is that the basic gist of it?
Your understanding is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Do wind and solar projects, wind farms, solar farms, whatever we want to call them, do they also require, generally, when they reach certain megawatt thresholds, do they also require the same certificate to come from the PSC?
Over a certain amount, then they would require that, yes.
Does
over
the
certain
bill,
megawatts.
Okay, and so for those wind or solar projects that are coming online or intended to come online throughout the state, does the bill also require that MDE or DNR would have to weigh in the same way for their certification process as what they would for a new power plant?
If you said would you repeat that question, please?
Sure. So my understanding of the bill is that if a company wants to build a new power plant, they have to apply to the PSC for this certificate process. And what the bill would now do is it includes an MDE and a DNR review process with certain specifications of what they're supposed to do. It adds those into what the PSC normally did. You have to jump through an additional process. My question is, for a wind or a solar project, would you have to do the same thing? So a wind operator, there's a wind operator, for example, that wants to come to my county, and that's fine, and I think they're in the middle of a process now before the PSC. Would they have to also seek the input of DNR and MDE and their recommendation, or is it just for power plants?
I think it goes back to the number of megawatts that particular plant would be offering. I can go back and get you the exact number on the megawatts, but it's a megawatt. Yes.
Is there any possibility, and I don't mean to hold anything up, but is there any possibility, rather than waste everyone's time today, that perhaps we could special order this until the next available session? You and I could discuss that and see maybe if an amendment would be needed or not?
Sure, that's fine.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your kindness.
You're quite welcome.
Question for the House is special order House Bill 777 to the appropriate time next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill has been special ordered. Clerk will read the next bill. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 7. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 673, State Healthcare Facilities Employees Alternative Work Weeks. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are 2 amendments to this bill, makes technical changes. Number 1. Number 2 alters the definition of alternative work week and strikes the requirement that an employee of a state facility who works an alternative work week is entitled to overtime pay. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 811, State Board of Social Work Examiners Revisions. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 moves the year in which the licensees will be required to get criminal background checks as part of the renewal process to 2023. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 873, State Board for Certification of Residential Child Care Program Professional Certification Revisions. Favorable.
The question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 13. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 314, Plastic Bag Reduction Act. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Be so much consider the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
As amended, this bill prohibits beginning July 1st, 2022, a retail establishment from providing a customer with a plastic carry-out bag. The appropriate unit of county government must enforce these provisions, and the bill establishes a civil penalty for violations. The bill's provision preempts local law, but the bill grandfathers local fees on non-plastic carry-out bags that were in effect, as of February 1st, 2021. The Maryland Department of Labor must adopt implementing regulations. Committee amendment. The amendment broadens an exclusion under the bill to exclude plastic bags provided by a farm or an orchard that contains fruits or vegetables that were grown by the farm or orchard. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Are adopted. Question now is adoption of the Fable report as amended.
Madam Speaker?
I see you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I see you, but I will call on you. Okay?
Thank you.
Question now is adoption of the Fable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Fable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Floor Leader, may the Floor Leader rise for question, please?
Yes, sir, Delegate.
Yes, ma'am. So, when does this act go into effect, please?
July 1st, 2022.
2022.
Next year.
Next year. Madam Speaker, for the purpose of having amendment, it's not ready yet. I'd like to move this to a later session for adjusting that time period.
I would agree with that, but I just want to provide a little bit of information for you. If you do not know, this bill allows the unit of government to provide up to 2 waivers at 3 months each for any business that feels that they're struggling to meet this mandate. So they would get an extra 6 months actually after the implementation date. I just wanted to let you know that, but I'm happy to work with you.
I'll have it ready, but thank you very much. I think this may have to do with from a statewide. Madam Speaker?
The question before the House is to special order HB 314 until the next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill has been special ordered. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 11. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 80, Department of Transportation and Department of the Environment, Purple Line Tree Replacement Plan. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
As amended, HB 80 requires MDOT to develop an urban tree program to replace trees that are removed during the construction of a transportation facility project, including the Purple Line, and to collaborate with MDE, DNR, and any other necessary state agency. Move the amendments.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. If there are any additional amendments, the gentlelady from Howard County in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to understand the amendment. The Transportation Department had some concerns, and it looks like the amendment may have made those go away, but I just wanted you to, if you could, explain what the amendment does and how it addresses the concerns of MDOT.
Floor leader.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Yes, originally as conceived, the Maryland Department of Transportation had a few concerns, but we worked with them on this amendment, and the sponsor worked with them to come to an agreement to make sure that the program for tree replacement does not just impact the Purple Line, but rather impacts all potential transportation for facility projects. Originally, if it would have just impacted the Purple Line, it could have potentially required a new EIS be done, which was why there was such a huge fiscal note. But because it just applies to any facility projects going forward, that fiscal note goes away, and they are now not concerned about the bill.
But what about the time frame? That was a big concern if they had to do another environmental study and bring everybody up to speed. Is that also gone, or is that still a problem?
Yes, that is all gone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional amendments or further debate to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 109, Public Safety, Maryland Swimming Pool and Spa Standards, adoption. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this bill requires that the Maryland Department of Labor adopt regulations, adopt by regulation the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code after review with appropriate modifications. Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 requires the Department of Labor to adopt certain requirements applicable to additions, alterations, or repairs as stated in the International Code. Amendment number 3 provides that the adoption of this code by the Department of Labor does not alter or abrogate the authority of the Maryland Department of Health to regulate the operation and maintenance of swimming pools and spas, and requires the Department of Labor to consult with the Department of Health on the effect of proposed modifications to the code on health and safety. And 3, requires the Department of Labor to consult with the Department of Health on the implementation of the code in relation to the regulation of operation and maintenance of swimming pools and spas. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor of its title. Recognizing the gentleman from Talbot in the annex.
Thank you, Speaker, but I pushed the button on a prior bill, so I don't have a question for this bill. It was for the bill that dealt with the purple line.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 295, Water Pollution, Stormwater Management Regulations, and Watershed Implementation Plans, review and update. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Be so much consider the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, the bill requires the Maryland Department of the Environment to review and update stormwater management regulations and criteria once every 5 years to incorporate the most recent precipitation data available. In addition, the bill requires the department to submit a climate load allocation addendum to the Phase 3 watershed implementation plan, as well as update 2-year milestones to EPA by December 31st, 2025. The First Amendment makes technical changes. The Second Amendment strikes the provision that would have required the department to propose an update to stormwater regulations by January 1st, 2020, and instead requires the department to report to the General Assembly by November 1st, 2021 on precipitation data and the department's plans for updating certain stormwater regulations. The amendments also add a definition for the term precipitation data. Amendment number 3 expands the list of stakeholders that the department must consult with prior to proposing the regulations required under the bill, and clarifies that the department may not delay the implementation of new stormwater requirements or standards established under this bill. Madam Speaker, move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report has been adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 325, Talbot County Deer and Turkey Hunting Sundays. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, HB 325 authorizes DNR to allow in Talbot County a person to hunt deer on private property on each Sunday of the deer hunting seasons from the first Sunday in October to the second Sunday in January. It also allows turkey hunting on each Saturday of the spring turkey hunting season. Amendment 1 alters Sunday turkey hunting authorization to apply to the entire spring season, and Amendment 2 strikes authorizations for Sunday hunting on public land. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report has been adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 562, Montgomery County Speed Limits Establishment, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 730, driver's licenses, learners instructional permits, and identification cards, applications and renewals, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 133 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 25. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 3, Correctional Services, Parole, Life Imprisonment.
Is on third reading and final passage.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to oppose the legislation that's before us. Currently, when the Parole Commission recommends parole for an inmate sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, the recommendation is sent to the governor, who can then do one of three things: 5 years, do nothing, and allow the recommendation to go into effect after 180 days. You know, it's with this. He's paroled 29 people serving life sentences. He's also approved or allowed 9 medical paroles to individuals serving life sentences. And because we didn't adopt reasonable mitigating language, there is the possibility that individuals serving life could get out in a very short period of time and will be held to the same standards as individuals who are serving for much longer sentences. So I think that our culture has changed dramatically as we look at issues like this. Obviously, medical parole and different things are being looked at in a much more compassionate way. And for those reasons and many others, I think the current process is appropriate, and I'm going to oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the young lady from Montgomery.
As I stand to talk on this bill, I'm reminded of a statement from the good delegate from Allegheny County that said, frankly, these orations and speeches don't change opinions and votes, but we should listen to the passion in the message. Listen to understand, not just to respond. So understanding, coming from a county in which some believe we prescribe to groupthink, why would anyone champion a bill that has not been and is not on our top 10 priority bills to pass? Why champion a bill about parole reform? Well, simply, it's about restoring truth into our judicial and correctional system, the essence of why we are here. See, I listened to that virtual committee hearing about this bill, and I heard the testimony from a Maryland judge who advocated for the passage of this bill because this long-standing practice of governors overturning the will of the people rendered his instruction to jurors as untrue. See, we have truth in our sentencing.
One of the truths is that we have provisions for the most heinous crimes. Those convicted are locked up and thrown away the key. That's called LWOP, life without parole. But we also have truth in sentencing that has provisions for redemption, second chances, and rehabilitation. So when a jury of peers listens to the case, has a long deliberation, and understands the implication of their decision, and they decide the appropriate sentence is life with a chance, not a guarantee, of parole, then a parole commission of experienced professionals after 15 plus to 20 years monitors and evaluates the inmate, and then recognize that monitored parole is recommended, and the governor just disregards that decision. Where is the truth? I've spoken candidly about personal loss of 3 generations of male family members to gun violence. And as the trial is nearing for my deceased cousin, who was just 21 years old, in the midst of our family's grief, I was disheartened to learn that the prosecutor for this case informed the grieving parents that a life sentence with parole, which is a certainty for the jurors to grant, is unlike in any other states equivalent to LWOP in Maryland, life without parole. Where is the truth? See, basically, our judicial system is operating as a structure of non-truths, from judges to jurors, from prosecutors to family of victims, from Department of Corrections and parole reforms. And I understand in a democracy, we are expected to have truth as the basis of our system. Our government has many truths that are embodied in our laws, truths about life, liberty, justice, equality, freedom, and opportunity. And our job as legislators is to make sure that that truth is evident, undeniable, consistent, unchanging, and everlasting for all posterity. See, the parole system, which this bill addresses, is 25 years overdue about restoring truths about restoring the will of the people who serve as jurors and on the parole commission board, restoring provisions of redemption, second chance, and rehabilitation in our Maryland correctional system and policies, and restoring the intent of Maryland law regarding sentences in crime and punishment. See, embodied in the truth is the understanding that this is a difficult process that we grapple with each year. But understanding that all truths pass through us, that understanding the quote that tells us that all stage is violently opposing, but that third stage is accepting the truth as being self-evident. It is time to restore truth that is self-evident in our judicial system by passing parole reform in Maryland. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker.
Chairman, to explain his vote.
To explain my vote very briefly, I just want to, again, ask for a green vote for this very, very important bill, but I also, with asking for permission to use a delegate's name, please. Okay. I just want to thank the delegate from Montgomery County, the delegate from Prince George's County, who have advocated for this bill for so long and have moved this bill so far. It's because of them and their passion that we are where we are today. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Clerk will call the roll. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 3, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 421, income tax distribution, tax clinics for low-income Marylanders.
Is on third, House Bill 421 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 123 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 421, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 539, historic revitalization tax credit, certified historic structure and single-family owner-occupied residence definitions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There be 130 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 539, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 656, election law, early voting centers, bus stops.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from St. Mary's.
I didn't stand up to ask questions on this bill yesterday, but I did hear an amendment came in, and the amendment started off something like, we strike the bill. What does the bill do currently? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask for the floor leader. My apologies, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the bill as originally filed would have required early voting centers to be located within a certain distance of fixed route transit. So the amendment replaces that with the requirement that if a county has fixed route local bus service within half a mile of an early voting center, then during early voting, that route needs to be adjusted to make a stop at the center.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 104 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 656, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 711, income tax subtraction modification, donations to diaper banks and other charitable entities.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. Her first bill, okay? Clap. There being 136 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 711, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 742, compensation to individual erroneously convicted, sentenced, and confined, the Walter Lomax Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the floor leader rise, please? Oh, there you are.
Committee Chair.
Right next to me. Could have just leaned over and asked you. Can you tell us
Would you
what
like
the...
to just, that's fine.
Well, since we're standing, we'll carry on.
Okay.
What is the fiscal note on this, please?
I think the fiscal note ended up, it is mirroring what the Senate passed out of judicial proceedings, and I believe it's $4.5 million.
And this is $4.5 million of state dollars.
It is.
Would this be to pay for wrongfully convicted people in, let's say, Baltimore County? Would the state pay for something that was adjudicated in Baltimore County and should have been paid by Baltimore County?
I think it will go to pay for people who are wrongly convicted, wrongly sentenced anywhere across the state, and I don't, and I think, frankly, kind of to speak on the bill just a little bit, the fact that they were wrongly incarcerated, the fact that they were wrongly convicted, the fact that they stayed in jail for considerable periods of time. In the case of the person that this bill was named after, they stayed in jail for quite a long time. I quite honestly don't care where the money is coming from. We should pay it.
Was there ever discussion to determine if those dollars should be retrieved from the jurisdiction that was involved in wrongfully convicting a person?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Never entertained to say...
At least in this year's incarnation of the bill, I'm not aware of conversations like that.
And just curious why that didn't happen.
I think because we were dealing with the larger issue, and this is an issue that this House has been dealing with for some time, of how we can properly compensate people who were wrongly convicted and wrongly incarcerated for years and years and years. We stayed focused on that, and this is the result of that. We actually came close to passing legislation last year, but the two houses couldn't agree. We have agreement this year, and I believe that we've got a good product that will seek to right some of those wrongs.
Did the state's attorneys weigh in on this?
I think the state's attorneys were involved in the discussions regarding this, and I know that the state's attorney for Baltimore County was involved with the discussions on this as it left the Senate.
And can you tell me how that state's attorney from Baltimore County, was he supportive of this bill?
I believe he was supportive of it, and he was involved with the negotiations all the way along the way. I have not talked to him in the last week about this legislation, but my impression was that he was working with the people who were working on the legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further debate? Gentleman from Charles.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just briefly on the bill, after hearing the last bit of exchange, I just wanted to clarify that we have the county courts to make sure you have a jury of your peers selecting you and judging you. However, we have state laws and we have state courts. Courts are empowered by the state. And remember, any of these cases have all gone through our appeal and our Court of Special Appeals. These are our highest state courts. So please make no misgivings that even if something was done and a mistake was made on a lower level, it is indeed our higher courts, our state courts, and our state laws that are enforced. That's why this is a statewide bill, and that's why state tax dollars are going to be used to provide these individuals with what they deserve. Please support this bill.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Cecil in the Annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick question for the floor leader.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, sir.
Yes, just a technical question. I know that we've had a few of these disbursements already, and we actually, it was a bipartisan letter that we wrote to the governor asking to expedite this. My question is, I tried to find in the fiscal note, does this take the BPW out of the equation for dispersing the funds? Because I know that those last couple had to be approved.
I don't believe. I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. We don't normally work with the BPW. I'm looking to the desk to see if if I can get an answer very quickly. It does not. I'm sorry, I'm getting a note indicates that it doesn't, and that's in the fiscal note.
Okay, I would just say that in general, support the bill, and that if there's any way to remove that delay in the future, this seems to set forth a formula which we didn't have before. But I appreciate your efforts, and we'll be supporting the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore City.
I would just add that when this chamber debated repeal of the death penalty, Mr. Lomax was one of the people who had been wrongly incarcerated, and he lobbied for that bill. And there was also an individual who was on death row, wrongly incarcerated, who lobbied for this bill. And it is in their honor that I will be voting for this bill.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to briefly say this. I've read some of these opinions. No one should have anything but empathy for the individuals who are wrongfully incarcerated, who did not commit the crimes of which they were charged, who served time in jail. That must be a horrific experience for anyone, really. Jail isn't a easy day, and to be there innocently must be terrible. But I do take some issue with the respect that the state taxpayers' dollar is being used, and there is no deterrent effect. There is no effect on the budget of the people who actually committed acts, whether they were acts of omission or whether they were malicious acts. And those are usually, I've read some of these cases, when the appellate courts come back 15 or 20 years later and say you were wrongfully incarcerated, they usually determine that the local prosecutor didn't turn over exculpatory evidence, or that police officers in a particular case didn't follow up with other leads or manufactured evidence or planted something. That wasn't the state police. That wasn't the sheriff's office in Allegheny County. That wasn't the Allegheny County prosecutor. That wasn't the taxpayers of the state of Maryland who did that. 9 times out of 10, that was a local process, a local prosecutor, a local police officer who did something wrong. And what this bill says is we're just going to provide a funding mechanism through the general fund and the Board of Public Works to compensate individuals, usually with millions of dollars. Many of the settlements have been in the range of millions of dollars, without ever going back to those individuals who made the mistakes, who committed the problems that caused all of this turmoil in the first place, and holding them fiscally and morally responsible. And that's why I'll vote against the bill. Not because we don't want to properly address individuals who've had this horrible thing happen, but I don't think that this particular mechanism is the best way to do that. Thank you.
Recognizing the majority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this bill is a long time coming. I mean, we have had people in this same position that have not been able to get compensated. So I thank the sponsor of this bill. And let me also just put a little face on the name there. I grew up with this gentleman's sister. I knew his brother and I knew his parents. But let me say that this guy was arrested at age 18. 18 years of age. And when they finally found, after court appearance and all kinds of tries of getting out, knowing his innocence, after which, finding him innocent, that didn't happen until he was 61 years old. This guy was arrested that long of a period, and he was innocent. So what kind of price do you put on that? We all, in every state, should pass a bill of this nature to pay, because he can't get back that time that he lost. His family won't get that time with him. And that very guy lobbies down here today for the lifers. So let me just say again, I will be voting in favor of this bill because this is the right thing to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker. Recognizing the gentleman from Frederick.
You know, this is an important debate because, quite frankly, I don't know how you rectify a situation when you have an individual that was wrongly incarcerated. I mean, what dollar amount could ever recoup what they've lost? You know, many folks, decades of their lives and the damage it's done to their family members. But similar to some of what my colleagues said, the issue I have is that in this state, we have 24 independent jurisdictions that have independently elected state's attorneys. And the idea that if an independently elected state's attorney and their office makes a mistake, that we would tax the rest of the independent jurisdictions to cover for that mistake. To put this in perspective, we have certain jurisdictions that have an operating budget of $5 billion. We have certain jurisdictions that have an operating budget of $45 million. But yet we would spread that cost out across the state. What I would see as fair and equitable is that if a jurisdiction makes a horrific, inexcusable mistake, they ought to pay for it. And that's all I would ask this body to consider. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Baltimore County in the Annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a conservative person, I find my role first and foremost to be to protect the individual from the state. And I can't think of a greater fault of the state than to actually take a person's youth erroneously. I think this is the right thing to do. I think there's some legitimate concerns here, but in all fairness, we did have an opportunity to amend this bill. So for the individual, I'll be voting green today. Thank you.
Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise today to support this legislation. And I want to explain two things. First of all, Mr. Lomax came to our committee, and many might recall that he had suffered a physical issue thereafter, and our sheriff happened to be there from Frederick County, and he saved his life. And he came back this year, Walter Lomax came back this year and made that statement on the record and thanked our sheriff. And then went on to just, again, petition that people who are wrongfully incarcerated, they're innocent folks, that this is a path of justice for them. And as to the issue of spreading out the funding, the way it works is if you sue your state's attorney in your local county, if you sue your county for wrongful withholding of evidence, that comes out of either the state Board of Public Works anyway. You have to go down there and get the approval anyway. Or it's going to come out of Legit, which is a state-funded insurance program. So I think that this simply provides that mechanism that these innocent folks are due, and I'm going to be voting green. Thank you.
The gentlelady from Montgomery County in the Annex.
Is it on? Again? Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate all of the comments on this bill, and I'm so happy to see it through. I wanted to make one small point to the comments about who should pay. One, if you look at these appellate decisions, many of them have to deal with evidence that wasn't available. We can't make the generalization that it was a state's attorney and that was the reason. Kurt Bloodsworth is one of those cases. He was the individual that the delegate from Baltimore City mentioned who was on death row. He was eventually exonerated by DNA evidence, which was not technology available at the time of his conviction. So we can't generalize that it's a specific county. Each case is different, and as my colleague from also mentioned on the floor, it's the appellate courts that are looking at this. Many of these cases are very old by the time they reach an appellate court or by the time exoneration is indicated. So it is appropriate that it's the state that looks to it. Adding an additional level that you were going to have to prove who was responsible for it is only going to delay payment to individuals that desperately need it and certainly are deserving. Thank you for your support of the legislation. So happy to see the Senate has already passed it and that the bills are basically identical. So the relief is going to happen. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
I just have a question for the floor leader, and I really don't know, and I hope this isn't a stupid question because I have no idea, but is it possible that the state could sue the county or jurisdiction to recoup some of that money, or no?
Not under this bill, not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
The gentleman from Talbot in the annex.
Thank you, Speaker. And I just wanted to share a different perspective. I'm voting for this bill. It is long overdue and it's needed. But each one of these situations have different angles to them. And just to share with everybody, first, for all the situations that have been brought up today, my heart goes out to those families and those individuals. Meanwhile, I know specifically in my home county, there's a very high profile case right now that's being reopened. My vote for this bill isn't to that case. I know the family members of the victim, and the family members of the victim are furious about what's going on with the case being reopened. I'm not getting into the merits of that, and my vote is not based off of that case. I'm not an expert in it, but it's real-time pain right now in the community. Whether or not, however the courts decide and how they rule, that's good and well. But just another perspective for back home, when I'm asked, when the sides, whoever's talking about this, this needs to be done. But there are some other perspectives to this issue. But I thank the sponsors for bringing the bill, and I wanted to share that with everyone. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to really quick rise to echo some of the comments made by some of our previous colleagues. I will be voting green on this bill, and I just wanted to let the body know this bill moved through the Senate 47-0 and is co-sponsored by a very distinguished senator from Harford County who I respect greatly. Thank you very much.
The gentleman from Baltimore City in the annex.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and to the chamber. I'm rising in support of this particular piece of legislation, and I agree wholeheartedly with the bill, the sponsor, and those who are in support of it. The one thing that I just want to emphasize is that we should not get caught up on the issue of who pays. The overarching issue that we should focus on and keep in front of us is that these individuals have already paid. We do a lot of things in this body, in this chamber, in this branch of government, where we are focused on doing the right thing and we figure out the money afterwards. This is a situation, this legislation follows that suit. Let's do the right thing. Let's do the right thing with this legislation, which I believe this chamber will do. and we will figure out, if we have to, where the money comes from. And I say that because as a member of the Public Safety Administration Subcommittee, who's chair of that subcommittee, we have a parallel issue dealing with this at the Board of Public Works that's coming through that particular subcommittee. But at the same time, I support this, and I urge everyone to support this legislation by putting up a green vote. Let's do the right thing. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentlelady from Baltimore City.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
The question is the previous question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. On third reading and final passage, clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker?
The gentleman in Anne Arundel to explain his vote in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. As many of my colleagues mentioned earlier, and I don't want to reiterate everything that they said, but there is no price for freedom. There is no price for the lives that were ruined because someone that may have been incompetent for whatever reason might have been made a mistake. So I encourage everyone that is a red vote on this bill to change it. And even though we cannot make what was done incorrectly right, but at least it's the right thing to do, to give some of those people some closure or some way to apologize to them. And you can't put the price on this one. So I encourage everyone to vote green on this bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I was just a young man and first came to Annapolis, one of and since that day, one of the things that I've remembered so vividly, there's so much that we do that, this process is just incredible, but I've never forgotten the moment where Kirk Bloodsworth sat in my office and told me his story. And that has profoundly impacted my view of social justice. And as a Republican, I don't trust the government. I really don't. And there's countless examples of where state prosecutors have failed, law enforcement has failed, and while that's the minority occasion, when it happens, it's wrong and just despicable, and the lives that are harmed are irrevocably harmed. And it's not just for that individual, it's for their entire family and everyone that loves that individual. So, I don't know if this is the perfect way to do it, but I think it's a good way to do it. And for that reason, I'm really eager to cast a green vote to be a voice for justice for individuals like Kirk Bloodsworth and so many others. Thank you.
All righty. Clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 742, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 815, State Agricultural Land Transfer Tax, application of non-agricultural use reduction and exemption.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 815, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Special order calendar number 35. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1048, election law, permanent absentee ballot list. Favor report is amended, adopted.
Gentlelady from Carroll County, maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just got the amendments it's hot off the press, and I think they're what I asked for. So I just want to remind the body of the conversation that we had yesterday on this bill. Basically, it's to have a permanent absentee ballot list maintained by our local boards of local boards of elections. And I understand we're trying to make it easier for people to have access to voting, but I had explained some issues yesterday about keeping the voter rolls current and keeping them clean, because we all agree that I believe we all agree that we want one person, one vote that's legally able to vote from the area where they live, the state they live, the county they live. And there was also some testimony on the floor, there's some comments about how close elections can be. One of our colleagues stated he won by one vote, then he won by a couple dozen votes. And so votes matter, and we want to make sure that everybody's vote is counted and counted accurately where it should be counted. And one of the issues that I've had for a long, long time is the ability for our local boards of elections to clean up the voter rolls. And I gave an example of my own daughter still getting a ballot last year after not living in the state of Maryland for 16 years. And it's just very difficult. We have a lot of things in place and I'm not going to go through them. There's a lot of things in place to try to get the rolls cleaned up, but they're still not cleaned up. And once we put them on the ballot, on this permanent ballot list, I think we should have cleaned up voter rolls. So I have an amendment here somewhere. Amendment number 153327/1.
Amendment number 1.
So be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Basically, this amendment will authorize the State Board of Elections to move a registered voter to the inactive voter list if the registrant did not vote in 2 years, did not confirm their address and voter registration by returning a prepaid postage card that had been mailed to their place of residence, and 3, then did not vote in the next 2 consecutive federal elections over the next 4 years, general elections over the next 4 years. At least 90 days prior to moving a registrant to the inactive voter list, the board must notify the registrant that they will be moved to the inactive list by a certain date and what steps the registrant may need to take to remain on the active voter list. Keep in mind, I do believe that voting is you have some responsibility. It's a right, but there are also some responsibility. And if you haven't voted for a long time and you haven't responded to the Board of Elections, who has asked you if you still live in the place, there is some responsibility that goes to leaving you on the voter list. So I believe this gives a lot of opportunities for people to respond and make sure that if they haven't voted, and it gives the Board of Elections the tools that they need to make sure that these lists that we're now going to be making permanent forever, they're going to get permanent absentee ballots. This will make sure that the voting list is as clean as can possibly be. So I ask your indulgence to try to make our elections secure and safe, and also to make sure that the people on the list actually reside where they say they reside before we move down this path of permanent absentee ballots. So I move the amendment. Thank you.
Recognizing the subcommittee chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And Delegate, I understand you just got the amendment, so I haven't been able to read it in detail, but I'll respond in concept based on what you just shared. First and foremost, to the body, it's important for us to keep in mind that we've been voting by mail or absentee for a very long time in this state. This bill is not creating absentee voting. We've been doing this. And on top of that, there has been no systemic issues that we're aware of when it comes to fraud or people purposefully trying to circumvent the process or take advantage of the absentee voting process. But we want to make sure that we do our due diligence to ensure that this list, the absentee ballot list, is accurate. And as I mentioned yesterday, that is done, and the due diligence is already done in this bill in several ways. I'm looking at the bill right now. To be clear, this list will be cleaned up because, first of all, a voter can request to be removed from the list if they no longer vote in Maryland or no longer wish to vote in Maryland or be on the list. The voter will also be removed when they are removed from the statewide voter registration list. And when the voter fails to return an absentee ballot for 2 consecutive statewide general elections, they are automatically removed from this permanent absentee list. On top of that, if any mail is sent to the voter from the State Board of Elections and is returned, they are then removed from this list. And so if that's not enough, we also clean up the list by proactively communicating to the voter that, hey, right before the election, if they're on this list, your absentee ballot is coming. Here's the information that we have for you. Is this accurate? If that mail is returned, that's another opportunity to clean up the list for the people who are getting mailed. So once again, colleagues, I believe we've done our due diligence in this bill in terms of cleaning up this list and making sure that it is accurate, and I urge you to resist this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
The gentlelady in the annex from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I guess we're good. Okay, I'm also standing up in support of this particular amendment. I did serve several years, several terms on the Central Committee. Now, it's been a while, so I'm just standing up to support this just in case these situations still occur. On the Central Committee, we had talked to the State Board at that time because we would continue every month get reports. And there was a lot of inactive lists. I mean, it was huge within all of the counties. And every time that we went to the State Board, they said they just did not have the staff available to actually go through all of those lists. Now, I know that you mentioned, several things that we've, I guess, currently have changed. But I don't know if that still situation, occurs where they just don't have the staff to go through all of those lists that you mentioned that we have now incorporated in going through the list. How often do they do that? Do they do it on a, on a current basis? Within the last 4 years, my sister had passed away, and I was taking care of all of her information, and I received a ballot for her, the information for her to go vote, but yet she was deceased. So that's just, another example. I know Delegate Krebs had mentioned, about her daughter. It took like 6 years to get her off of the current role because she had moved. Well, in my case, my sister had passed away, but yet I was still receiving information. So I think this amendment is very good, and it will be a good resource to go ahead and put on this bill just as a safeguard that we are cleaning up the, the voter rolls, and if we're not, this will take care of that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaker.
Gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Although people in Calvert, many of the original people that are there still say Culvert. I'm a newcomer, I say Calvert. So I rise to support the amendment, Madam Speaker and members of the House, because in my household in Calvert County, I had 4 ballots that arrived in the House. I have 3 children. They're all in the workforce. They're not at home, but received 4 ballots. And I thought to myself, wow, how easy would it be to just fill out 2 ballots that probably should not have been there? Would have been pretty easy. And I thought, well, what if 1,000 households in Calvert County received 2 additional ballots because of the same reason as me, because in Calvert, it's very common at this particular point in time that we have a lot of children who are aged out of the house and beyond college and in the workforce, but their parents are still receiving these ballots. How easy would it be to just, either request a ballot if you received an absentee ballot, or fill out and mark the ballot itself when you receive the ballot? It would be quite easy. And it would be a game changer in certain elections, which is why it's a bad idea, which is why I support this amendment. I also want to say that I did talk to the State Board of Elections this morning, and they agree. Now, they don't take policy positions on bills, of course, so they're not going to openly say that, this bill, House Bill 1048, is a bad bill. But let's face it, it's going to make their job a lot harder.
and it's going to open up many possibilities for bad things to happen, just like in Calvert County, where we know for a fact that at least 1,500 households received far more ballots per household than people living there because their children have long since moved. So for those reasons, I support this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Talbot in the annex.
Thank you, Speaker. Colleagues, I'm rising in support of the amendment. The statement was made earlier that that the bill ensures that there won't be any problems or any errors. And you know, what we've just gone through in this last election is unheard of. Unheard of. You know, the government sending out ballots randomly to individuals, and this has never even been thought about. In fact, if you would have mentioned it before this year, COVID, most people would just fall out of their chair almost in bewilderment. How would you be able to manage something like that? The statement that the bill takes care of problems, I can't agree with that. I know from experience, I had a list I was keeping earlier this year from people calling me about ballots being sent to their house, or somebody else has somebody else's ballot. And I mean, just countless problems with keeping track of the ballots. And we just went through this election, and we still don't have the information from the election. So we still don't really know exactly how the mail-in ballots work. You can't say with certainty how they work. I'm not falling into a political trap here, but let's be realistic. And I don't know if anybody else in the chamber has had the same experience that I had. Maybe it's just our district where ballots were mailed this way, but it was a huge problem. And to stay here and to be here today and say there is no problem, we're moving forward, is very presumptuous. It's very dangerous. This amendment is it's put together in such a way that it forces a second look at the list of voters that are put into this new category. I see no problem with that, and it doesn't do anything to restrict with what the proponents of this bill are trying to do. I'll be honest with you, I don't support this bill. I think it's hugely problematic, and I'll be speaking about that. But as far as making an improvement, I don't see how this impedes what the proponents are trying to do with the bill, other than add some requirement that the State Board of Elections, or provide them some guidance on how best to handle this responsibility. Now, you heard earlier, with another delegate who actually talked to the Board of Elections, and they admit this is a problem. Does anybody send mass mailings? Does anybody send a group mailing? If you ever send a group mailing, how many of those pieces of mail come back to you? Those are updated mailing addresses. How is the Board of Elections supposed to be the repository for every voter and know where every voter lives and be able to contact them? I mean, this isn't a flyer we're sending out, it's a ballot. And a ballot's really important. We've got one responsibility. We get one right. We're a democracy. That right is to be able to vote. That shouldn't be taken lightly. It shouldn't be thrown around like party candy. We're gonna vote. It's voting time. We're gonna throw ballots around. Come on, everybody vote. That's not democracy. That's chaos. This is a very good amendment, and I urge everyone to support it. Thank you, Speaker.
Recognizing the sponsor of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wish to make a quick clarification for the body. The State Board of Elections has been involved in the development of this bill every single step of the way. I've talked to them about this bill as recently as this morning, and the amendments that we adopted actually were from the state board because we've been working with them closely. So I want to clarify for the body from that comment made earlier, and per my earlier comments, urge you to resist this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Maker of the motion.
Thank you. I don't want to belabor this. You just mentioned that the State Board of Elections worked with you, but I don't see a support letter in there. I don't know if they don't take positions on bills. And it's not whether you support or not support. Everyone wants to have clean election rolls. We're trying to give them the tools that they need to do it in an expeditious manner, because what the floor leader mentioned a few minutes ago or a while ago is this process that we currently have. And we do have a process, but it's very, very lengthy. It takes years and years to get someone off of the rolls. And as was just described, we all have sent out mailings before, and you get back hundreds and hundreds of, they're not at this address anymore, they've moved. And maybe they've moved in their own community, maybe they've moved somewhere else in Maryland, and maybe they've moved to some other state. The reason this amendment is here today is because we're looking at a bill. The bill in front of us basically extends and makes permanent an absentee ballot list. So forever. You're going to apply for this ballot, and then forever and ever you're going to be able to get through email or fax a ballot forever. And you're never going to really know if that person's in Timbuktu or if they're still living in Maryland or at the address where they are. So the first thing we need to do, if we're going to even go down this road of a permanent absentee ballot list, is to allow the voter rolls to be cleaned up to the best of their ability in a very timely manner, not in 5 years or 10 years, but in a timely manner, because these people are going to be getting emailed ballots, not physical ballots. They're not going to have to mail them from their home. They're going to be getting emailed ballots, and you can get email anywhere. It doesn't have to be at a physical address. I'm reading from the Maryland Association of Election Officials letter, basically saying even more commonly, voters move to another address and do not update their address with the local Board of Elections office. So the voter's ballot will be returned to the local Board of Elections, and the potential requirement to contact the voter becomes an administrative function that most local boards do not have the capacity to manage. So I think we need to realize, how are we going to manage this process? And this amendment at least helps to give them the tools to manage it in a more efficient manner. And I move the amendment, and we want to have some cleaned up, and keep it in mind, the spirit of what we're moving to here is these permanent absentee ballot lists. That's why we want to do this. So I move the amendment.
Question for the House is adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call,
Noes
Madam
have it.
Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Anne Arundel in the annex to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was going to actually speak on the amendment. There was a little delay, but I also want to share that I have myself 4 people that live in my household that reside overseas and that sometimes get absentee ballots. So my parents, my in-laws, that's 4 people that live. And if we ever move out of the house or the addresses gets transferred, fraud will happen. And the question that I have for the sponsor, if you can guarantee us...
You need to explain your vote, Jim.
If the sponsor can guarantee us that no fraud will ever happen under this bill, we'll be more leaning towards supporting this bill. But obviously, I don't think they can. And this amendment would have made it a little bit more secure. And for that reason, I support the amendment. But I still oppose the bill because I just think it's not unnecessary.
Recognizing the majority leader.
To explain my vote, Madam Speaker, I just, sometimes we have debates on this floor and there's a disconnect between the debate and what the language actually says. And I think the floor leader did a good job explaining it. But I just want to clarify for everyone, the language of this amendment does not apply solely to people that vote by absentee ballot. It applies to any voter. And it would set a new standard in the state of Maryland for the first time. It would remove you from the voting rolls if you choose not to vote. Not if you move. There's no evidence that somebody's moved. What this language does, it says if you choose not to vote, you can be removed from the voting rolls, and then if you later want to exercise your right to vote, your constitutionally protected right to vote, you have to go back through the registration process. This disenfranchises people. And that's why I'm voting red.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you. And I've said my piece, but I think that the prior speaker didn't read the whole amendment because there's three different things you have to do. I'm not going to go through them
To
again.
explain your vote, please.
I'm explaining my vote. So I'm explaining my red vote because it does clean up the rules. It gives three different options for people many times to respond. It doesn't just give one, it gives three. So it is not what was just described. I think you need to read the amendment better, and I'm voting red because I think our citizens want everybody to have one vote in one place where they live, and that's what this is attempting to do. Thank you.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentle lady from Carroll.
Thank you. I have a second amendment at the desk. Amendment number 223023/1.
Amendment number 1.
Should be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
This amendment gets, I guess, to the other part of the problem we have with this permanent absentee ballot list. Basically, it requires any communication to the voter be sent via mail, no email or texting. It requires that ballots only be mailed, not via email or fax. And then that's the first part of the second one. It requires a study to review the financial, technological, staffing, and security implications of delivering absentee ballots through email, fax, or other electronic method, as well as communications with voters via text, email, or other electronic record. This is sort of uncharted territory, what we're trying to do here, that people are going to get electronic ballots. They never ever verify whether they still live in the state. No real ability to clean up the rolls. And if you look at the testimony from the Maryland Association of Election Officials, it basically said, it's of critical importance that this committee recognize the constraints that the State Board of Elections and local boards of elections are under when it comes to the fiscal impact of implementation of a process that requires technology that has not been created in the current registration database, and the personnel necessary to make sure all voters are notified and processed in a consistent manner. Also, the ongoing cost of sending notifications to permanent absentee voters is one that the local governments and the state need to work together to manage. I'm not going to sit here and give the examples of what it's like to run an election, and only those who have been involved with elections know what happens the last few weeks before an election. And the amount of absentee ballots that are sent out, the number of people call in and say, I've moved. I mean, everybody does everything at the last minute. And now we're going to have email addresses and electronic fax machines tied to people, not just their mailing address. It also expresses these same concerns in the fiscal note, and they really haven't been worked out. Now, given the fact that the next election is not until 2022, I believe there's time, if we want to move in this direction, to at least take this piece out, hold up, and do this study so that we can find out the answers to this stuff by December of this year and find out what the costs are going to be, how it's actually going to work. So the main concern is the list is being open to the fax and internet options, and this Maryland Association of Election Officials believe it's a security and administrative problem. We believe the bill should be limited to only mail-in ballots with some kind of rulemaking required by the State Board of Elections for the fax and internet options. There are some important accessibility issues, but they present a big risk if you continue to make it available to the general public and then make it permanent. So this amendment basically talks about doing this study, the study language in there, about how we're actually going to do this permanent part. Not permanent by mail. Permanent by mail is a whole other issue. This is permanent by electronic means. That we would study how that's going to work in the state of Maryland. There's only a couple of states that do it, and some of the states that do it, like Massachusetts, they require that you have a disability. You prove a disability in order to be able to do this. So we're really, I think we're heading down a path that we haven't done our homework on, and this will not affect this happening for the next election if they find out that it will work. It just asks us to do our homework first, get the study back, and the next session we go to the electronic part of it, not, the permanent absentee ballot, and so I move the amendment. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker.
Subcommittee Chair and sponsor of the bill.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Delegate, for this engagement today and you thinking through the legislation. When it comes to the ways that the ballot are delivered, that is